The grand ocular of the Ethel Guardian High Synod was not merely a window. It was a statement of theological dominion, a vast, convex aperture of diamond-hard transparency that spanned the entire forward bulkhead of the orbital spire, looking down upon the burning golden curve of the homeworld Ethelgard Prime. In this chamber, the silence was heavy, textured like velvet, smelling faintly of ozone and crushed spices, a scent designed to sharpen the mind and suppress the baser instincts of fear. High Exarch Valen stood before the ocular, his reflection ghostly against the backdrop of the planet he ruled, his four-armed silhouette draped in the iridescent nano-weave robes of state that shimmered with the color of bruising storms. He was a creature of refined violence, tall and gaunt, his chitinous plating polished to an obsidian sheen, his eyes, multifaceted and burning with amber light, fixed on the holographic projection floating in the center of the room. He did not turn as the heavy doors of the chamber hissed open, admitting the cool, recycled air of the corridor and the hurried, clicking footsteps of his first strategist, Calith. Valen knew why Calith was here. The strategist was a creature of anxieties and data, a being who found comfort in the predictability of numbers and terror in the anomalies of the void. And there was an anomaly. There had been an anomaly for 3 cycles, a ghost in the machine of the Ethel Guardian expansion, a silent variable that refused to resolve itself into an equation that Valen could crush with his armadas. The Empire was expanding, its borders pushing outward like the event horizon of a slow-motion explosion, consuming star systems and minor civilizations with the inevitable gravity of history. But now, at the edge of the periphery, in a sector of space that should have been empty dust and dead rocks, the advance had stalled. Not because of a fleet, nor a fortress, but because of a silence. "You bring me the same report, Calith," Valen said, his voice a low, grinding sound like stones shifting deep underwater. He still did not turn, his gaze fixed on the golden curvature of his world. "I can feel your hesitation in the air currents. It tastes of cowardice." Calith stopped a respectful distance away, bowing low, his upper manipulators folded across his chest in the sign of submission, though his lower hands twitched with nervous energy over the data slate he carried. "Not cowardice, High Exarch," Calith replied, his voice higher, thinner, vibrating with the urgency of a scientist who sees a fire where a soldier sees only fog. "Caution, prudence. The anomaly in Sector 7 Gammon remains unresolved. The forward flotilla's report. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And that is the problem. Our long-range Auspex sweeps should be detecting background radiation, micrometeoroid impacts, the faint thermal signatures of stellar drift. But in a localized region surrounding the third planet of that yellow star, there is a void in the data, not empty space, High Exarch, a mathematical null. It is as if the universe has simply ceased to report its existence in that specific coordinate." Valen finally turned, his robes swirling around him like liquid smoke. He looked down at the strategist with a mixture of pity and contempt. The Ethelgard were the apex predators of the galactic arm. They had conquered the crystalline arachnids of the nebular shroud, they had burned the hive cities of the Orokin, and they had dismantled the automated dreadnoughts of the ancients. They did not fear empty space. They filled it. "It is a sensor ghost, Calith. A magnetic anomaly caused by the magnetosphere of the local star. You delay the crusade for a glitch." "It is not a glitch," Calith insisted, stepping forward, risking the Exarch's wrath for the sake of the truth he saw in the numbers. He activated the hololith and the projection changed. The golden world vanished, replaced by a wireframe map of the frontier. A small, insignificant star system pulsed in red. "We sent a probe, a Class 4 stealth courier designed to slip past the most advanced sensor nets of the Orokin. It entered the null zone 2 standard hours ago." "And," Valen demanded, his patience thinning. "And it vanished," Calith said softly. "It did not transmit a distress signal. It did not register a collision. It did not report an energy spike consistent with weapons fire. The telemetry simply stopped. 1 microsecond it was there, transmitting full diagnostics. The next microsecond, the quantum entanglement was severed. Cleanly, instantly. High Exarch, matter does not simply cease to exist. Even a nuclear detonation leaves a scream of radiation. Even a black hole leaves a gravity wake. This was erasure." Valen strode toward the hologram, his heavy footsteps echoing on the polished floor. He stared at the red pulse of the target system. This was the territory of the Terrans, a minor species, new to the galactic stage. Soft. Skinned, bipedal, prone to internal squabbling, possessed of a primitive curiosity that the Ethelgardian psychological profiles deemed endearing but suicidal. They had no great fleets. Their ships were blocky utilitarian things, welded together from plates of hull metal that looked like industrial scrap compared to the elegant, grown crystal hulls of the Ethelgard. They had expanded slowly, cautiously, asking for trade routes rather than taking them. They were weak. And in the philosophy of the Ethelgard, weakness was a vacuum that demanded to be filled by strength. To leave a weak species independent was an insult to the hierarchy of the universe. The Terrans, Valen spat the word. They are playing tricks with jamming frequencies. They are primitives, Calith. They burn hydrocarbons for atmosphere within their own gravity wells. They use kinetic projectile weapons. Do you truly believe they have developed a weapon capable of erasing a courier drone without a trace? Or is it more likely that your maintenance crews failed to calibrate the containment fields on the probe? I have checked the maintenance logs, Calith said, his voice trembling slightly. But High Exarch, consider the diplomatic missives. When we announced our intention to annex the sector, the Terran response was not panic. It was not a plea for mercy. It was polite. They sent a single message. Please do not approach the exclusion zone. It is for your own safety. That is not the language of a victim, High Exarch. That is the language of a parent warning a child away from a hot stove. Valen laughed, a harsh, chittering sound that rattled in his throat. Arrogance born of ignorance. They do not know what approaches them. They believe their little exclusion zone will protect them because they have never seen the sky turn black with the hulls of the hegemony. They are children closing their eyes and believing they are invisible. Valen swept a hand through the hologram, scattering the data stream. I am tired of ghosts, strategist. I am tired of silence. If there is a null zone, we will fill it with fire. If there is a mystery, we will dissect it. Order the Grand Armada to assemble at the jump point. I will lead the vanguard myself aboard the Sovereign's will. We will burn this exclusion zone from the map, and we will drag the Terran leaders from their holes to explain their magic tricks before we execute them. Calith bowed again, deeper this time, hiding the fear in his eyes. He knew the logic of the hegemony. Strength was truth. Victory was proof of divine favor. But Calith was a student of the old histories, the ones kept in the archives that Valen rarely visited. He knew that in the cosmos there were two kinds of predators, the ones that roared to scare their prey and the ones that made no sound at all because they had nothing to fear. The Terrans had been quiet, too quiet. And as Calith backed out of the chamber, leaving the High Exarch to his contemplation of the golden world below, he could not shake the feeling that the Ethelgard were not the hunters in this scenario. They were the noise, and something in the dark was listening. The assembly of the Ethelgard Armada was a spectacle of terrifying beauty. It took place in the high orbitals of the staging moon, a choreography of destruction that had been perfected over 1,000 years of war. Hundreds of capital ships, their hulls grown from psychoreactive crystals and reinforced with neutronium plating, hung in the void like jewels strung on a necklace of gravity. They were sleek, sharp, and predatory, bristling with lance batteries and plasma torpedo tubes. Swarms of fighter craft buzzed around them like angry hornets. The sheer scale of the fleet was designed to break the enemy's will before a single shot was fired. It was a display of resources, a hammer made of diamonds and starlight. On the bridge of the Sovereign's will, the flagship of the fleet and a vessel the size of a small city, Valen sat upon his command throne, surrounded by the sensory feeds of 1,000 ships. The bridge was a cavernous dome, the ceiling a continuous projection of the space outside, giving the illusion that they were floating unprotected in the void. Fleet synchronization at 100%, reported the comms officer, a young Ethelgardian whose carapace was still hardening. All drive signatures green, weapons capacitors at maximum charge. We are ready for translation. Take us to the Terran border, Valen commanded, his voice amplified to ring across the deck. Let us see what lies within their silence. The translation to hyperspace was a tearing of the fabric of reality, a violent lurch that nausea-induced even the most hardened veterans. The stars stretched into infinite lines of light, and then the universe snapped back into focus. They had arrived. The Armada emerged in the outer reaches of Sector 7 Gammon, their sensors immediately sweeping the system. The yellow star burned. Steadily in the distance, the planets were where they should be, but there was no Terran fleet. There were no orbital defense platforms, there was no minefield. There was only the exclusion zone, a cubic light minute of space located between the 4th and 5th planets, sitting in the emptiness. Report, Valen barked. Where are they? Where are the defenders? Sensor sweeps are clear, High Exarch, the tactical officer replied, sounding confused. No active drive signatures detected in the system, no comms traffic. Wait. The officer hesitated, his fingers flying over his console. I have a contact, single contact, bearing 000, range. It is sitting directly in the center of the exclusion zone. A station, Valen asked. No, High Exarch, it reads as a vessel, but the dimensions are wrong. It is massive, but it has no energy output. It is cold, near absolute zero. If I didn't have visual confirmation, I would say it was an asteroid. Put it on the main viewer. The view screen zoomed in, the optics compensating for the vast distance. Valen leaned forward, expecting to see a fortress, a dreadnought, something that justified the Terran audacity. What he saw made him pause. It was a ship, yes, but it was unlike anything the Ethelgard had ever built. It was ugly. That was the first thought that crossed his mind. It was a brutalist slab of matte black material, a rectangular monolith that absorbed the light of the distant star rather than reflecting it. It had no elegant curves, no glowing engine nacelles, no visible weapon blisters. It looked like a brick thrown into a cathedral. It hung in space, motionless, rotating slowly on its axis with a lethargy that suggested it had been there for 1,000 years. It was vast, easily 3 times the size of the Sovereign's will, but it looked dead. Is it a derelict? Valen asked. Have they abandoned a hulk to block our path? Scans are inconclusive, Calith said from his station at the science console. He had insisted on coming despite his fears. The hull composition is unknown. It is not reflecting radar or LiDAR. It is absorbing them. High Exarch, the readings are disturbing. The space around that ship is flatter than it should be. The gravity well of the ship is artificially suppressed. It is not just sitting in space, it is anchoring it. Open a channel, Valen ordered. Let us wake the dead. The communications officer complied. Channel open, broad spectrum hail, directed at the vessel. This is High Exarch Valen of the Ethelgardian hegemony, Valen announced, his voice booming into the transmitter. You stand in the path of the Imperial Vanguard. Identify yourself and power down your engines, or you will be destroyed. Silence stretched on the bridge. The crew watched the black monolith on the screen. Seconds ticked by, then minutes. They are not responding, the tactical officer said. Perhaps there is no one on board. There is someone, Calith whispered. Look at the thermal variance. On the screen, a tiny light flickered on the side of the massive black ship. A running light, a simple, rhythmic pulse of white light. Then the comms console chirped. It was not a video feed, it was audio only. The voice that came through was calm, sounding weary, lacking any digital modulation or translation artifacts. It spoke perfect High Ethelgardian. This is the United Terran ship Silent Witness, the voice said. We received your message, High Exarch. We are currently conducting calibration exercises in this sector. As previously stated in our diplomatic communique, this is a hazard zone. We strongly advise you to alter your course and return to your own space. We do not wish for an incident. Valen bristled. The tone was patronizing. It was the tone of a teacher scolding a student. You are outnumbered 500 to 1, Terran, Valen snarled. You command a floating brick against the might of the hegemony. You do not give orders here. You surrender. We are not fighting you, the voice replied, sounding genuinely sad. We are simply here. Please turn around. Your ships are beautiful. It would be a waste to damage them. Arrogance, Valen roared, slamming his fist onto the armrest of his throne. They mock us. Tactical lock target on that vessel. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Let them feel the heat of our plasma. Belay that, Calith shouted, stepping away from his console, his eyes wide. High Exarch, do not fire. The energy readings coming from that ship, they aren't zero anymore. They're inverted. I'm reading a localized collapse of the Higgs field within their hull geometry, if you fire energy at them. Silence, strategist, Valen cut him off. I command here fire. The Sovereign's will shuddered as its forward lance batteries discharged. Beams of coherent ruby light, hot enough to boil the oceans of a small world, streaked across the void. They covered the distance in seconds, striking the flank of the Silent Witness. The bridge crew braced for the flash of impact, the flare of shields, the debris. But there was no flash. The beams hit the black hull and vanished. They didn't reflect. They didn't detonate. They simply ceased to exist at the point of contact. The black material of the ship drank the energy, and for a brief second, the running lights on the side of the vessel pulsed slightly brighter. The Silent Witness continued its slow, lazy rotation, unharmed. Direct hit confirmed, the tactical officer said, his voice trembling. Damage, 0, energy absorption 100%, High Exarch, they ate it. Impossible, Valen whispered. Shields flare, armor ablates, nothing absorbs a lance strike. "Hi, Exarch," the voice from the silent witness returned. It sounded slightly more awake now, perhaps a little disappointed. "That was unwise. We absorb kinetic and thermal energy to power our internal recyclers. You have just topped off our batteries for the next 6 months. Please do not do it again. The containment buffers can be temperamental." Valen's mind raced. It was a trick, a specific shield modulation designed to counter laser fire. "All ships," he commanded, panic beginning to bleed into his fury. "Full spread, torpedoes, railguns, plasma, overwhelm their capacity, tear that abomination apart." The Ethelgard armada obeyed. It was a storm of violence. Hundreds of ships unleashed their arsenals. Thousands of missiles streaked through the dark, followed by swarms of railgun slugs accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light. The space between the fleets lit up with the exhaust of death. It was enough firepower to crack the crust of a planet. On the bridge of the Silent Witness, Captain Elias Thorne sat in a chair that was decidedly less ornate than Valen's throne. He held a mug of lukewarm coffee and watched the tactical display with tired eyes. He was a man of middle years, his face lined with the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing too much. Beside him, his XO, Commander Alina Rossi, tapped a command into her console. "They've fired everything, Captain," she said. "Impact in 30 seconds. "A pity," Thorne sighed. "I was hoping they'd be the smart ones, initiate the null state protocol, keep it local. I don't want to accidentally de-evolve their crew, just the ships." "Aye, sir, engaging the erasure field." Out in the void, the storm of ordnance approached the Silent Witness, and then the universe blinked. The black ship did not fire back. It did not raise a glowing wall of energy. Instead, a ripple passed through space, emanating from the ship like a stone dropped in a pond. It was a distortion, a wave of transparency that moved faster than light, expanding outward to encompass the incoming missiles and the Ethelgard fleet beyond. Where the wave touched, physics changed. The thousands of missiles simply stopped. Their engines died, their warheads inerted. The chemical reactions sustaining their propulsion were paused. The railgun slugs lost their momentum instantly, dropping their kinetic energy into the quantum foam, turning from deadly projectiles into drifting lumps of metal. The plasma bolts unraveled, their magnetic containment fields dissolving, the plasma dissipating harmlessly into the vacuum like steam. But the wave didn't stop at the projectiles. It washed over the Ethelgard armada. On the bridge of the Sovereign's Will, Valen watched in horror as the lights died. The holographic ceiling flickered and vanished, leaving the true, cold starlight above. The hum of the engines, a sound that had been the background heartbeat of his life, cut out. Gravity plating failed, leaving the crew floating in freefall. Consoles went dark. The air circulators stopped. In an instant, the mightiest fleet in the galaxy had been turned into a collection of drifting statues. "Report," Valen screamed, his voice echoing strangely in the dead air of the bridge. "What is happening? Restore power." I can't," the tactical officer floated past, frantically tapping at a dead screen. "The reactor is cold. The fusion reaction has stopped. Hi, Exarch, the atoms, they aren't fusing, the strong nuclear force. It's been manipulated. We can't generate power because physics won't let us." Calith pulled himself along a handrail, his face pale. "I told you," he whispered. "I told you it was erasure. They haven't destroyed us, High Exarch. They have turned us off. They have reached into the fundamental laws of our reality and edited our permission to function." The radio crackled. It was the only thing working, powered by primitive chemical batteries that the field had apparently spared, likely by design. "This is the Silent Witness," Captain Thorne's voice came through, clear and calm in the terrifying silence of the dead ship. "We have temporarily suspended high-energy reactions in your vicinity. Your life support will function on emergency reserves for approximately 12 hours. We are coming aboard to talk. Please do not attempt to use kinetic sidearms. The field renders gunpowder and charge packs inert. It would be embarrassing for you to try." Valen floated in the darkness, surrounded by his terrified crew. The humiliation was total. He had come to conquer, and he had been rendered impotent without the enemy firing a single shot. He looked out the viewport, the only thing that still functioned. The Silent Witness was moving now. It drifted closer, looming over them, a black mountain blotting out the stars. A small shuttle detached from its hull, a simple, blocky craft, and headed toward the Sovereign's Will. The boarding party did not blast the airlock. They simply opened it. The security codes of the Ethelgard flagship had been bypassed as easily as a child's riddle. Valen waited in the grand hall of the ship, floating near the ceiling, his honor guard drifting helplessly around him, their energy pikes useless sticks of metal. The humans entered. There were 5 of them. They wore simple, pressurized suits of white and gray, not armored battle suits but environmental gear. Their helmets retracted to reveal soft, pink faces, vulnerable and exposed. They carried no weapons. Captain Thorn led them. He pushed off the bulkhead and drifted toward Valen, orienting himself to match the high Exarch's verticality. He looked ordinary. There was no glowing aura of power, no cybernetic enhancements, just a man with tired eyes. "High Exarch," Thorn nodded politely. "I'm Captain Elias Thorn. I apologize for the dramatic shutdown. We find it saves lives, yours mostly." Valen's mandibles clicked in fury, but he felt the crushing weight of the situation. You are monsters," he hissed. "You have stripped us of our power. You have violated the sanctity of war to fight without fighting. It is cowardice." "It's efficiency," Thorn said, landing lightly on a wall and securing his boots with magnetic clamps. "And it's not war. We aren't at war with you, Valen. We never were. You were just loud enough to trigger our perimeter alarms." Calith drifted forward, his curiosity overcoming his fear. "The technology? You manipulated the cosmological constant locally. You suppressed the strong nuclear force. That requires energy on the scale of a supernova. How does a ship that size contain it?" Thorn looked at the scientist and smiled, a genuine sad smile. "We don't contain it. We borrow it. We just open a door to somewhere else. Somewhere where the laws of physics are different, and we let a little bit of that reality leak in. Just enough to dampen your fires." "Why?" Valen demanded. "If you have this power, why hide? Why use small ships? Why beg for trade? You could rule the galaxy. You could erase the Orokin, the ancients, us. You could be gods." Thorn's expression hardened. The weariness deepened, and suddenly the human looked ancient. "Because we tried that once," he said softly. "Long before we met you, we built empires, we conquered, we burned worlds, and we learned that the louder you are, the more attention you attract. And there are things in the dark, High Exarch, that eat empires." The room went silent. The atmospheric gravity of Thorn's words was heavier than the planet below. "What things?" Calith whispered. Thorn tapped his wrist computer. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the dark hall. It showed the galaxy, a spinning spiral of light. But at the edges, in the intergalactic void, there were shadows, not emptiness but movement. Masses of something that did not reflect light, moving inward against the flow of the stars. "We call them the entropy chorus," Thorn said. "They don't want territory, they want heat. They want order. They feed on organized energy systems. Empires, fleets, stars that burn too bright. They are drawn to complex energy signatures like moths to a flame. The more you expand, the more you use your high-energy plasma and your warp drives, the faster they come." Thorn gestured to the frozen Ethelgard fleet outside. "Your expansion, your crusade, was lighting a beacon. You were screaming into the dark, inviting them to dinner. We intervened not to save ourselves from you, but to save the galaxy from what you were waking up." Valen stared at the map. He looked at the shadows creeping toward the galactic rim. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the failing life support. His entire worldview, the glory of conquest, the necessity of expansion, crumbled. He had thought himself a lion roaring his dominance. Now he realized he was a child shouting in a forest filled with wolves. "The silent witness," Calith murmured. "The name, it is not a threat, it is a description. You watch." "We watch," Thorn agreed. "And when we have to, we quiet things down. We are the silencers. We keep the galaxy dim, keep the noise down so that they pass us by. We are hiding High Exarch. All of humanity is hiding, and we are trying to hide you too." Valen looked at the human captain. The anger drained out of him, replaced by a hollow sensation of insignificance. But with it came a strange clarity. The Ethelgard valued strength above all else. And here, in this soft, weaponless creature, was a strength that terrified him. The strength to hold the power of a god and choose to be a janitor. "What happens now?" Valen asked, his voice rasping. "Do you enslave us? Do you erase us permanently?" "No," Thorn shook his head. "We turn the lights back on, we give you your engines back, but you go home, you stop the expansion, you dismantle the Lance batteries and the planet killers, you keep your borders, but you stay quiet. You learn to live in the dark with us. We will share our stealth technology with you. We will teach you how to mask your energy signatures, but the crusade ends today." Thorn stepped closer, his eyes locking with the alien's multifaceted gaze. "Because the next time you light a signal fire that big, we won't be the ones who answer. And the chorus doesn't take prisoners. They don't leave hulks. They consume the information of the atoms themselves." Thorne tapped his comms. "Rossi, drop the field slowly. Let their reactors restart." "Copy that, Captain." A hum began to vibrate through the deck plates. The lights flickered and steadied. The gravity plating engaged, and Valen dropped to his feet, his knees buckling slightly. The Sovereign's will groaned as it woke from its coma. "We will be watching," Thorne said. "We have ships like the Witness in every major sector. Just watching. Be quiet, Valen. Silence is survival." The humans turned and walked back to the airlock. They didn't look back. They didn't strut. They walked with the efficient, heavy gait of men who had a long job ahead of them. Valen stood in the grand hall, his officers scrambling to their stations, checking systems, weeping with relief. Calith remained standing by the High Exarch. "High Exarch," Calith asked softly, "what are your orders?" Valen looked at the view screen. The blocky, ugly shape of the silent Witness was turning away. It didn't engage a warp drive. It simply faded. It didn't become invisible. It just became unnoticed. The eye slid off it. It slipped into the folds of the background radiation and was gone. Valen looked at his hands. He looked at the mighty fleet outside, the diamond-hulled ships that he had been so proud of. They looked fragile now. They looked like glass ornaments waiting to be shattered. "Orders," Valen repeated. He looked at the map of the galaxy, at the creeping shadows on the rim that only the humans had seen. "Recall the fleet," Valen said, his voice firm but stripped of its old arrogance. "All vessels, return to Ethelgard Prime, cancel the construction of the dreadnoughts, and Calith." "Yes, High Exarch." "Get me everything we have on heat-masking technology, and open a diplomatic channel to Earth. Do not demand, do not threaten." Valen paused, looking into the deep, terrifying black of space. "Ask them to teach us how to whisper." The silent Witness sat in the void, 1,000,000 kilometers away, watching the Ethelgard fleet turn its engines toward home. On the bridge, Captain Thorne finished his coffee. "They're turning back," Rossi reported. "Energy signatures dropping to cruising levels." "Good," Thorne said. He rubbed his temples. "That went better than the Orokin negotiation. At least they didn't try to worship us." "Sensors are picking up a ripple in Sector 9, Rossi said, her voice tightening. "Deep range, pattern delta, it's the chorus. They sniffed the energy spike from the battle." Thorne sat up, the exhaustion replaced by focus. "How close?" 3 light years from the rim. They're changing course. They're heading toward the noise." Thorne sighed. "All right. Helm, set a course for Sector 9. Engage the lure protocol. We need to go out there and flare our engines, draw them away from the inhabited systems." "That's a suicide run, Elias," Rossi said softly. "It's the job, Alina," Thorne said, staring at the screen where the shadows moved. "The galaxy is a noisy nursery. Someone has to keep the wolves away from the door until the kids grow up." The silent Witness pivoted, turning its back on the safety of the interior systems, and headed out toward the crushing dark of the intergalactic void. It was a single ship, unnoticed, unthanked, and terrifyingly powerful, sailing into the night to fight a war that no one else even knew existed. And as it slipped into the slipstream, erasing its own wake, the galaxy spun on, safe in its ignorance, protected by the monsters who had learned to be kind.